A bomber so strange, it looked like engineers had bolted the wings on backwards. And yet, it flew. Not just flew, it soared into history as one of the most radical aircraft designs ever built. This is the untold story of the Ju-287, Germany's secret jet bomber with wings that defied logic, physics, and even the war itself. But what made this bizarre bird take flight? And why did it vanish before the world could see what it was truly capable of? Let's dive into the mystery. In 1942, the German Ministry of Aviation issued a challenge that sounded more like a fantasy: build a bomber faster than any Allied fighter. At the time, propeller-driven aircraft were reaching their limits. The Luftwaffe needed something radically different, something that could outrun the enemy before they even saw it coming. Jet propulsion was the only answer. But designing a jet bomber wasn't just ambitious, it was borderline insane. The technology was new, unstable, and untested in heavy aircraft. Still, at Junkers headquarters in Dessau, one man was ready to gamble everything. Hans Woka, the chief designer, didn't just think outside the box, he shredded it. His idea: wings that swept forward instead of back. It looked wrong. It felt wrong. But wind tunnel tests revealed something shocking. Forward-swept wings could generate more lift at low speeds and maintain smoother airflow at high speeds. They could even push the aircraft toward the sound barrier without triggering aerodynamic chaos. But there was a catch. These wings twisted violently under stress. They bent, flexed, and threatened to tear the plane apart mid-flight. Woka knew the risks. He also knew the reward: a bomber unlike anything the world had ever seen. And so, the blueprint for the U-287 was born. Not from caution, but from pure, unfiltered audacity. Forward-swept wings weren't just rare, they were practically forbidden. Most engineers avoided them like a death sentence. Why? Because under stress, these wings didn't just flex, they twisted. The airflow could spiral out of control, leading to catastrophic failure mid-flight. But Hans Woka wasn't most engineers. He saw something others missed. In wind tunnel tests, forward-swept wings showed smoother airflow across the surface. Unlike traditional wings, they didn't lose lift at the tips as quickly. That meant better control at low speeds and more stability during high-speed flight. It was aerodynamic alchemy, if you could tame the twisting. To pull it off, Woka needed a structure so stiff it could resist the violent aeroelastic forces. That meant pushing materials to their limits and redesigning internal supports from scratch. It was risky, expensive, and borderline reckless. But Woka believed the payoff was worth it. This wasn't just about building a bomber. It was about rewriting the rules of flight. And in 1943, with Germany desperate for a miracle weapon, Woka's gamble got the green light. The U-287 was no longer a sketch, it was a mission. By late 1943, Germany's desperation for a miracle weapon had reached peak fever. The Luftwaffe needed something bold, fast, and untouchable. That's when Junkers received the official order: build a 4-engine jet bomber. The project was codenamed U-287. From the start, it was chaos, controlled chaos. Designers at Junkers worked at breakneck speed, constantly tweaking the layout. Wing angles shifted, engine placements changed, even the mission profile evolved. At one point, the team considered a smaller 2-engine reconnaissance plane, but that idea was scrapped almost overnight. Instead, they doubled down. The U-287 would be bigger, heavier, and far more radical. Its silhouette began to emerge: forward-swept wings, multiple jet engines, and a bomb bay unlike anything seen before. Most bombers had their payloads limited by wing placement or landing gear. Not the U-287. Its main wing spar sat behind the bomb bay, allowing for a cavernous compartment right in the fuselage center. This wasn't just a bomber, it was a statement, a flying contradiction, a machine that looked like it shouldn't work, but somehow might. And as the blueprints turned into metal, the world's first forward-swept wing jet bomber began to take shape. If the Ju-287 looked strange from a distance, up close it was downright bizarre. Every inch of it screamed improvisation and innovation, sometimes both at once.
Let's start with the landing gear. Instead of designing a sleek, retractable system, Junkers engineers scavenged whatever parts they could find. The main gear legs, taken from a U-352 transport plane, reinforced and locked in place. No retraction, no elegance, just brute functionality. And the nose wheel? That came from an American B-24 Liberator, covered but still awkwardly poking out beneath the nose like a misplaced prosthetic. Then came the engines. The U-287 V1 was powered by 4 Junkers Jumo 004 turbojets, the same ones used in the ME-262. But these engines weren't exactly powerhouses. To lift a heavy bomber, they needed 4. Later prototypes were even planned with 6. 2 engines hung under the wings near the fuselage ends, while the other 2 were mounted directly on the front sides of the fuselage. crash. It was a Frankenstein setup, but it worked. And for takeoff, engineers added rocket-assisted boosters. Disposable Valter 109-501 packs were strapped under the wings. During the maiden flight, they fired for just 3 seconds, then dropped away like spent fireworks. But the real showstopper was the wing design. Forward-swept, aggressive, and unlike anything the world had ever seen. The U-287 didn't just look like a bird flying backward, it was the first aircraft in history to actually fly with forward-swept wings. It was eccentric, it was extreme, and somehow it was airborne. August 8, 1944. The prototype U-287 V1 rolled onto the runway at Brandes Airfield near Leipzig. At the controls was test pilot Holzbauer, tasked with flying a jet bomber that looked like it belonged in a science fiction novel. Engineers held their breath. The forward-swept wings, the scavenged landing gear, the rocket-assisted takeoff. It was all untested, unproven, and wildly unconventional. And then it flew. Smoothly, safely. Against all odds, the U-287 lifted off and soared through the sky. Over the following weeks, it completed at least 17 test flights. No major issues, no catastrophic failures, just a strange, agile bird that handled shockingly well. Inside Junkers, the mood was electric. They had done the impossible. A jet bomber with forward-swept wings wasn't just theoretical anymore, it was real. The U-287 had proven itself in the air, and its potential was staggering. But while engineers celebrated, the world outside was collapsing. June 1944 had brought the Allied landings in Normandy. Germany was now fighting on multiple fronts. The Luftwaffe, once dominant, was losing control of its own airspace. Allied bombers were tearing through factories, fuel depots, and supply lines with relentless force. In this moment of crisis, the German High Command made a brutal decision. Reichsmarshal Hermann Göring issued a sweeping order. All bomber programs were to be shut down immediately. The focus would shift to interceptors and vengeance weapons, fast, nimble aircraft designed to defend the homeland and strike back. The U-287, despite its success, was caught in the crossfire of bureaucracy and desperation. Officially, the project was canceled. Resources were pulled. Plans were shelved. The bomber that had just proven it could fly was grounded, not by failure, but by politics. Yet behind closed doors, some development teams refused to give up. They continued working in secret, tweaking designs and exploring possibilities. The U-287 wasn't dead. It was just buried under layers of wartime chaos. And while the official story ended there, whispers of its resurrection were already beginning to surface. Just when the U-287 seemed destined for the scrap heap, a new idea reignited its potential, one that stretched far beyond Europe. Late in 1944, German strategists revived a bold concept, the America bomber, a long-range aircraft capable of striking targets across the Atlantic, including New York City. Desperate for options, a commission reviewed every viable design. Among them was the U-287. With upgraded engines and a lighter frame, it showed promise. On paper, it could make the transatlantic journey. For a brief moment, the U-287 was back in the spotlight, no longer just a tactical bomber, but a potential game-changer. But the dream was short-lived. In February 1945, the Luftwaffe chose a different path, the Horten Flying Wing. Sleek, futuristic, and even more radical, it stole the role of Germany's long-range hope. The U-287 had been resurrected, rejected, and reapproved, all within months. It was a design caught in the chaos of war, constantly pulled between innovation and desperation, and its fate was about to be sealed. So now, imagine yourself in the cockpit of the U-287. The rockets fire, the engines roar, the wings stretch forward like a bird in reverse. Would you take off in this wild machine or stay safely on the ground? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's see who's brave enough to fly.